Okay, everybody, let's get started. Um, Welcome to the next in our series of ToloTalks. This presentation is going to be on the IMA-S Hygienic Linear Actuator, and it's presented by me, Mike Welfel. I'm the new product manager here at Tolomatic. So what I'm going to show you in this presentation is a quick kind of competitive market overview of the competitors we'll see when we use the IMA-S hygienic stainless steel actuator. And I'm going to spend just a few minutes on integrated motor actuators, IMAs, on the platform themselves, just to talk about the benefits of those. And then we'll move specifically into the IMA-S, the stainless steel version. And we'll talk about the design of it, and then we'll get into some of the application wins we've had, and then talk about how to apply this product and the options that are available, and then we'll wrap up with the Q&A. So on the next slide here, I want to show you kind of the spectrum of actuators that are out there. And these are a lot of names you're probably familiar with: PhD, eDrive, XLAR, and these are traditional actuators. And what happens as you start to apply integrated motor actuators, you narrow the field down a lot and you narrow down your competition a lot. So once you're talking about integrated motor actuators, the competition really becomes XLAR and Dicont and perhaps a few other stragglers. And the field narrows even further when you start to talk about truly hygienic integrated motor actuators. And so when you zero down into applications where you can use this product, you really create a sort of a unique market situation with a unique product and a strong opportunity. And the trick is just to identify those applications where this product would be most useful. So then I just want to do a bit of a review on Tolomatic's integrated motor actuators. So our integrated motor actuator line has started out with the standard rod style actuator, which is a very compact, lightweight, power dense platform that comes in 4 frame sizes: 22, 33, 44, and 55. And with forces up to about 6,900 pounds and speeds up to 60 inches per second and strokes up to 18 inches. And these can be applied with either ball screws or roller screws. So that's where this integrated motor actuator line has started and has existed for a while. And we've extended that with a white epoxy food grade option for moderate washdown applications. And then finally into the product we're talking about today, the new IMA-S hygienic actuator. So then, just as a further review, I wanted to show you this video of how an integrated motor actuator really works. And the really unique device is on the outside of the motor actuator is a standard stator winding, just like you'd have in any servo motor. But what makes it unique is that the rotor assembly is hollow. And in a traditional servo motor, this is just a solid piece of steel. And on an integrated motor actuator, we make it hollow and make room for both the roller or ball nut and also the ball screw and the thrust tube all fit within that. So here's the roller or ball screw. And then you can see that green part, that would be the ball nut assembly. And as you rotate it, that traverse is extended or retracted. And you might notice that what this does for you is it eliminates a lot of other mechanical components like timing belts or couplers or gear heads or gears. So it gets rid of a lot of extra mechanical elements in it. So that's how all of these Tolomatic integrated motor actuators work. And so there's a lot of benefits that you get from this technology. And you can kind of summarize it in that you get labor reductions, performance increases, size reductions, and reductions in components. And to go into a little bit more detail on that, in terms of labor, your time to design and document the actuator system, if you're the OEM, drops significantly. Your time to assemble the actuator system drops down for the OEM, and fixing any problems with an actuator assembly is reduced significantly. And then from a user, the time to replace the actuator and/or servo motor drops significantly because they're all bundled into one piece. So, for example, for users that have very expensive downtime, you've probably seen when they just start swapping out components if there's a fault somewhere in the system. And this actually makes their diagnosis go much faster with an integrated motor actuator. In terms of performance, because you eliminate those gears and timing belts and other mechanical elements, your settling time is able to be much lower on your motion profile because you can set the gains of your servo system much higher. So your settling time is reduced and your positioning error is reduced, so performance increases. Then the size, of course, is reduced dramatically, and also the weight is significantly reduced. And this benefits, of course, both OEMs and users. OEMs want to make smaller machines, and users want smaller machines. But also, if you have the actuator being used as an end effector on a robot, your robot can have faster cycling times. So size is a big factor with this too. And finally, of course, the number of components are reduced. So those are sort of the detailed advantages of the integrated motor actuator. And if you're really interested in diving deeper into this, we have a white paper on this that you can locate on the website that goes into even finer detail. So this was sort of the advantages of integrated motor actuators in general. And as Tolomatic has acquired deep experience in hygienic and outdoor applications, we've been able to hone the technologies and materials used in our actuators and understand customer challenges much better. And so now we'll shift into focusing on the IMA-S actuator specifically. So as we've talked with all these customers and applied actuators in different applications, we've found that there's really four high-level customer needs that have gone unmet for the most part. So they are still looking for higher corrosion resistance, greater washdown protection in terms of being able to spray a component on the machine and not have water get into it, and then reduced bacterial growth so that you get rid of cavities on the device where bacteria can grow. And finally, shorter cleaning times. You know, cleaning is not something that the users want to spend time doing, so the less time they can spend on cleaning, the better. So here's how we've addressed those needs with the IMA-S. First, to decrease corrosion or increase corrosion resistance, we've used 316 stainless steel. And if you aren't familiar with the different grades of 300 series stainless steel, you'll probably hear more about 316 in the years to come. 316 is kind of the gold standard for stainless steel. There's lower grades like 304, and they just don't hold up quite as well in washdown applications. So the IMA-S is all 316 stainless down to the screws and the cable clamps and the thrust rod. So we've used 316 on the whole product. To increase the washdown protection, we've used flush FDA-approved O-rings and rod seals, and the whole device is IP69 rated for an environmental rating. To reduce bacterial growth, we've designed the product with welded seams and you can see the radiused edges, and the round housing is actually polished to a fairly smooth level, because even scratches on mechanical devices can be areas for bacterial growth, or harborage, as they call it in the food and washdown industry. And finally, to minimize the cleaning time, the whole device is designed to be clean in place, meaning that you don't have to remove anything from the mechanical device to wash around it. You don't need to put any shroud around it, or you don't need to pull off any parts or shield any parts to apply high pressure washdown. So those are the things we've done to the IMA-S to make it really the best product that can be applied in these hygienic applications. So next, I just want to show you how the IMA-S fits in with our existing product lines. So the IMA wash down, the food grade version with the white epoxy paint on the left here that I alluded to earlier, that's sort of our lightest, from a wash down standpoint, lightest duty product that you can apply on machines. And you'd want to avoid direct high pressure washdown when applying these. So if you have a machine that has elements that are away from the high pressure spray but still need an actuator, you can confidently apply the IMA WP actuator. Next is an actuator that you might be familiar with, our ERD series of hygienic actuators. And this series of actuator uses the 300 series, actually 304 series stainless steel. So it's still something you can use in high pressure washdown, and it also has an IP69 rating. But as you can tell, looking at this, there's a lot other areas for harborage or cavities for bacteria to accumulate. So it is harder to wash down. So those two products are part of the product line. And then, of course, there's the IMA-S that we've been talking about, which is the 316, and can be used in clean in place applications. So that's kind of our product line. And I wanted to use this lineup to then show you what our competitors offer. So one of the competitors that you've probably heard about is XLAR, or Curtiss-Wright now. And the best that they offer right now is a food grade paint version like this long rod style actuator that you see that you wouldn't want to use in high pressure washdown situations. And you can kind of imagine, with those tie rods still external on the device, how many areas there are for bacteria to accumulate in that. And that's really all XLAR has to offer for hygienic applications. Then there's other folks like eDrive and Bimba and PhD, and they all offer actuators like this that are not integrated. And most of them are made out of 300 series, not 316 series stainless steel. And some of them even only come with an IP67 rating instead of a 69 rating. So when you compare those to the IMA-S with its 316 stainless steel and other features, it's really a superior product for those applications. So next, I just want to go into a couple of application wins to so this first one is in the food and beverage industry, and this is a volumetric piston filling machine. And originally they were using air cylinders in this. In fact, this picture here was the original air cylinders. And we replaced those with IMA-S actuators, and of course provided better cycle times and more accurate dispensing of material and so forth. And this one did integrate in with a Rockwell automation control system, so we used the Hyperface DSL encoders on it. And once again, you see that the competition on that one was XLAR. So that was one application in the food and beverage industry. Another one was a meat slicing application. And again, this one was replacing pneumatic cylinders. And I think originally some of the components on this even had to be protected with steel shrouds so that they weren't subjected to direct spray. But this is another application in food and beverage. And this one, unfortunately, I don't have a picture of, but we have a fairly recent one in the pharmaceutical industry where it was actuating a stainless steel door on a pharmaceutical machine. And again, the customer wanted a product that could be clean in place, and they absolutely wanted 316 stainless steel. So you're probably going to hear about that more in the future. This one was a 460 volt version with another single cable connection to a Rockwell controller. And this last one was a cheese slicer, and you'd probably, if you haven't seen cheese slicers before, you'd probably be amazed at how accurate and high performance they are. But here again, this one needed IP69K, yet another one integrating with the Rockwell Kinetics system. And this one actually, the customer originally looked at the ERD system that I showed you, or the actuator, and they decided to wait until the IMA-S was ready. So that kind of shows you the advantages of the IMA-S. So next I want to get into applying the IMA-S actuator. So one thing that happens in hygienic applications that you might not be familiar with is it's very common to need to provide some vented air to the actuator, because as the actuator extends and retracts, it creates abrupt pressure changes within the interior of the actuator. The other thing that happens is as temperature changes with the sort of colder environment in these applications, then the pressure inside the actuator changes. And although the seals are exceptionally good seals on this, when there's such abrupt pressure changes, you can potentially get moisture ingress into the actuator. So what I'm showing circled here are the breather ports on these actuators that it's a really good idea to work with the customer and apply some dry, usually unpressurized air that perhaps gets vented back to the control enclosure. And just as an example of how important this is, this other picture on the right is a Cole Morgan stainless steel servo motor. They've actually built some vents into their connectors like that. So just something to be aware of when you're applying these, that it's very good to vent them like that. And the other application tip is to avoid positioning the actuators with the thrust rod up. So again, the thrust rod seals are excellent seals, but you don't want water pooling on those seals, just increasing the chances for water ingress into the actuator. So those are a couple preliminary application tips. And here's just a summary of the IMA-S products that are available. 33 size, and then the SA33 over on the right. And the SA33 over on the right is essentially the same as the ST33 in the middle there. However, the S33 on the right has a integrated anti-rotate feature inside of it. So looking down along the bottom of this table, you can see that they're offered with 5, 10, 20, and both ball nuts and roller nut options for them, depending on the size. And then you can see the peak force ranges from 325 pounds on the left for the ST22 to 2,500 pounds on the right for the ST33. So that's just a high-level view of the product performance and the frame sizes. Then I just want to show you the mounting options for these products as well. So there's a rear clevis mount, And there's a 90-degree rear clevis mount you can use, and then there's a front flange mount that you might be familiar with. And of course, all these components are stainless steel as well. From a feedback standpoint, up on the upper left here, we have several flying lead options for cables that allow you to use both hyperface DSL, hyperface encoders, Heidenhain NDAT encoders, and of course, incremental encoders and resolvers. Over on the upper right are the primary connector options that we offer. There's a Rockwell VPL connector, and then there's a Tolomatic standard connector. And then, of course, you can get the cables shown on the lower left here in 3 and 5 meter options. And then, as you might be familiar with, we integrate with most common servo systems. So we should be able to easily match up to whatever servo system you're using. And of course, our applications engineering team is really familiar with these, so feel free to call them with any questions. So one other element of this product that I want to familiarize you with is the options for the field replaceable thrust rod seal. So first of all, the fact that the thrust rod seal is field replaceable at all is really helpful to customers. A lot of other actuators, you actually have to remove the actuator from the machine and replace the rod seal on it, pull it apart substantially. On this actuator, you would just have to remove the whatever the thrust rod is attached to get that new actuator on. So there's two versions of the thrust rod seal. There's a standard version which works well for general applications and tolerates a little bit higher temperatures and is still IP69K and hygienic. And then there's a hygienic option that is FDA approved. It's the FDA blue color. And it has a little higher chemical resistance. So you can choose either one of these depending on the application. Then switching around to the back of the actuator, there's two styles of fasteners that you can choose optionally for these. The standard fasteners on the left are 316 hex bolts, and they use 316 bonded steel washers. So if you look really closely on your screen there, you can see the ID of that washer has some material on the inside of it that helps seal it. So those are the standard fasteners. For a hygienic application, particularly one that has to comply with E-Hedge, the European requirements for hygienic applications, we have the HYG2 fastener option, and that uses these 316 E-Hedge polished and flanged hex bolts that you see down in the bottom middle there. And then also 316 E-Hedge washers, and you can see they have a blue fluoroprene sealing material on them, so that creates an incredibly good seal and minimizes cavities around the bolt and the washer there. So those are the rear fastener options. So then I wanted to also familiarize you with the sales tools that are available for the IMA-S. And things that you might be familiar that Tolomatic always provides with new products are the flyer, the brochure. Here is the installation manual for the IMA-S, the video, and of course the IMA-S is fully supported in the sizing software, and then the CAD files that are available off the website. So you've made it through another ToloTalk presentation. Let me just summarize the advantages of the IMA-S actuator. So as we talked about, one of the big goals for this was the higher corrosion resistance. And as you've heard a lot from me today, it uses the 316 stainless steel housing and components. It has the greater washdown protection provided by the FDA O-rings and the IP69K rating. And of course, the reduced bacterial growth from the welded seams and polished housing. And then your cleaning time is reduced significantly because you can clean it in place. So those are probably the main things to remember when you go into your next application looking at applying an IMA-S actuator.